Hi, I'm Graham Seed, the voice of Nigel Pargetter. Thank you so much for listening. We've been truly humbled by the response to Season 1. Our podcast will always be free, but if you're interested in making a small donation per episode, there are loads of perks you can enjoy that are listed on the website. So why not visit us on www.patreon.com/Pargetter Triptych. If you can't, don't worry, but just tell your friends and remember to subscribe.
Jennings, it's raining. Come into the house. Here, the French windows. For heaven's sake. Yes, that's right. In here. I know, it's the library. It's not interesting for dogs. Oh, God, you brought that toy squirrel. Don't bring it near me. Just lie down and have a little snooze. Like my father always did in here. There we are. Now that thing when you're trying to think of somebody's name and it's driving you mad. I've spent most of the morning trying to remember the name of Jack Woolley's dog and it just won't come to me. Bouncer? No. These books. Highways and Byways in Borsetshire. Forgotten Borsetshire. Cotswold Crossroads, the story of Borsetshire. I used to laugh at them when I was younger, but now I quite like them. When I inherited the house and we were desperate for money, I had someone come in to see if we had anything valuable, like a first folio tucked away somewhere. But of course we hadn't. Acres of Victorian stodge. And the Great War in 15 volumes. Oh yes, there it is. I was trying to remember the name of that dog, because when I was a swimming pool salesman, he helped me make my one and only sale. Trade on the family name, they said to me, so I used to go out and say, I'm Nigel Pargetter. You know, the Lower Loxley Pargetters. Would you like to buy a swimming pool? And people used to say, quite reasonably, well, have you got one up at Lower Loxley Hall? I did make a very tentative approach to my father, pointing out how it would help my career if he bought one. And he started ranting on about how we were not living in some vulgar suburb of Hollywood, and he had better things to do with the land of his forefathers than dig a hole in it and fill it with chlorinated water, and so on. The truth was that he hadn't been at the time, as I soon found out when he died. The house was literally crumbling to bits. Anyway, the only one I sold was to Jack Woolley, who owned Grey Gables at the time. It's not there now. I think it's spraying several leaks. He bought it because he thought he owed me something after I saved his dog from jumping off the roof. Could my mind be playing tricks here? No, it did happen. First time comedy, second time tragedy. For some reason I was on the roof of Grey Gables with the dog, but it was a one-storey extension, and that obese old staffy had no intention of jumping anywhere. All I had to do was pick him up, which gave me backache for days, and take him down to Mr. Woolley, who was practically in tears of gratitude. What was his name? Oh, do you remember his name, Jennings? Shame you can't talk. Lucky. Rufus? No. My father had ideas of improving me by sending me off to places out of Borsetshire, starting with boarding school. But it never seemed to do me much good, and I always got homesick. And then he sent me to Zimbabwe, but it really wasn't me, and I rather think the Zimbabweans felt that too. I did try to point out to my father that if I couldn't make a living in Borsetshire, it was fairly unlikely I'd be any good at it in Africa, but you couldn't reason with him. And then the stock exchange? Whatever possessed him? After they discovered I didn't understand what a decimal point was, they put me onto working a photocopier, and it used to jam all the time. Sometimes it caught fire. Absolute nightmare. The whole experience. I always thought that as a father I'd been an improvement on him, and I think I was. But then I vanished from the children's lives when they were 11. Just 11. That was the worst thing. Worse than even leaving Lizzie, because they were so young. Even now they're not very mature for their age, especially Freddie. which is hardly surprising given that I never really felt mature myself. The number of times I've wanted to say, "Not that, don't do that, I did that, no good came of it." But they can't hear me. That's very kind of you, Jennings. But you play with Squirrel. Ugh, he seems to be rather soggy, doesn't he? I'll just scoot him across the floor for you. There we are. At my prep school, we used to ask each other dreadful questions, like would you rather your mother or your father died? The truthful answer to that, which I didn't give, was that in those days I didn't very much care, as long as the dogs were all right. And my nanny, which obviously I couldn't possibly say. In the end, I said I'd rather my father died, but only because Tim Beecham said it. In fact, Tim said he was praying for it. He was in the middle of a terrible row with his father because his father had smashed Tim's record of honky-tonk women, saying it was the work of the devil and entirely unsuitable for a 10-year-old. The masters there were always saying to me, "Why do you have to do something just because Tim Beecham does it?" A, because I wanted to, and B, because at the time it was a matter of life and death to me that he was my friend. I just used to say, "Sorry, sir," and dash off. Later on I realised I really was closer to my mother than my father. She wasn't a very caring woman, but she was interesting, and at least she took some notice of me. My father just seemed to regard me as a problem to be dealt with, generally by sending me miles away from Lower Loxley. He didn't let me help with the running of the estate. That's why I was always trying to sell swimming pools or ice creams. Although I did have a lot of fun on the way. I was always happier in Borsetshire, somehow. It was only after my father died and we could start to make a proper business out of running Lower Loxley that I made an approach to growing up. That and Lizzie, I suppose. But I think I had to be here in Borsetshire for anything to work. Have you noticed it can be quite dangerous to go somewhere else? I remember, for instance, Peggy Woolley's first husband went to Scotland to be cured of something and promptly died. Sid Perks the Bull took the fatal risk of going to New Zealand for his daughter's wedding, and Daryl Nelson Gabriel went off to Costa Rica to enjoy himself and avoid police attention for a few months, and that was the last anyone in the country saw of him. We never got to the bottom of that. Of course, he's come back now. I see him flitting about, and he says, "Ah, Nigel, you still owe me for that magnum of champagne from 1993. But as a living creature, he never returned. I wonder why he came back here after being so scathing about Borsetshire and the people in it all his life. I suppose he's more like me than you might think. Captain, that was it, Captain. No, not you. You're not called Captain, are you? Captain wasn't a sweet, good-natured dog, Jennings. Far from it. He was getting on for 5 stone and very snappy. Oh, has the rain stopped? Come on then, do you want to walk through the wood? It's got all sorts of lovely things scurrying and flapping about in it. You like that? No, you keep Squirrel. He's happier with you. Are you coming? Good boy.
Thank you for listening. If you're interested in supporting us, please check out www.patreon.com/Pargetter Triptych.